Hi there. Welcome to folks who are hopping on and joining us. Really appreciate the folks who are early to the very first training of the very first day of Netroots. Welcome Connie and Mickey and Randall and Ryan and Wendy and Amy. Glad to have you all here. So our official start time is in a couple of minutes, so I want to give folks a chance to hop on. So now would be a great time to stretch, grab some water or orange juice, whatever you need. Run to the bathroom before we get started, and we will be beginning at 11 a.m. Eastern, I guess 8 a.m. Pacific. And as we're all getting in, I would love for folks to kind of start to use this chat to introduce themselves. Let me pull up my screen. Kind of with what your experience with campaigns is and any experience you have with the campaign planning process. Okay, Todd is from Buffalo. Any campaign experience you have or campaign planning experience, Todd? Okay, welcome, Ivana. Again, if folks are willing to share in the chat any campaign experience, no campaign experience, awesome. First cycle as a campaign manager, welcome, Jessica. I remember my first cycle as a campaign manager. It was really exhilarating. Folks who have been canvassing before, that's wonderful. Looking for a more macro level view, that's great. Okay, we have a couple folks with no campaign experience. That is totally fine. Yes, we rise to legalize. Great, thank you, Todd. Okay, awesome. Well, Wendy, thank you for running for office. I really appreciate it. And definitely hoping that this can be helpful for you as you put together your campaign. Emily, volunteering on campaign definitely counts as campaign experience. I think that's how all of us got started. Wonderful. And AJ, congratulations on your first cycle. That's great. It's 11:01. Great. Bert has 16 years in the labor movement. Can totally, pull them in if, we're getting a bit stuck. Thank you so much for your work in labor, Bert. Great. Well, it is 11:01. I want to get started, and hopefully folks who hop on a bit late can, kind of just slide right into our session. My name is Ryan Olson. I'm the Training and Curriculum Director with Emerge, where we work to recruit, train, and provide a network of support around Democratic women who aspire to run for political office. And the goal of this session, hopefully you're in the right place, is building a campaign plan in 60 minutes. And now that we're in a virtual setting, it is building a campaign plan in 50 minutes. The nexus for this is, I've been a campaign manager, I've been a field director, I've been a deputy field director, I've been an organizer, I ran a nonprofit, I've done fundraising, and for the past 3 years, I've been the training and curriculum director with Emerge. And what I found looking through our own curriculum and also looking at how we train on campaigns as a whole is we train a lot on individual tactics. We'll train on field, we'll train on fundraising, we'll train on communication, but very rarely do we give folks the chance to see how all of the pieces come together, how they're all interlinked, and how each campaign can seem similar on the surface, but can be wildly different from any other campaign that was ever run due to the circumstances and factors that impact this campaign. So this is a growth of exercise I did with our Georgia boot camp. We had about 25 self-identified women from across the country, Kansas, Wisconsin, Georgia, Mississippi, etc. And this was kind of their capstone of our weekend boot camp training, taking all these different pieces that we collected and putting it into a full campaign plan altogether. The goal of this is for it to be really interactive. So I am going to have you all using the chat. You can see that I'm not like just straight up presenting my Google Slides because I'm going to be editing the Google Slides as we go in order to incorporate your feedback as we build this campaign plan together. I have some notes of things I calculated ahead of time, but there's a chance that we build a campaign plan that I haven't predicted. So I really appreciate your flexibility and being, game and ready to go for an interactive exercise on how we put a campaign plan together. I do want to thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it, and learning these skills, gathering in community, uplifting voices is how we change politics and power. I truly believe that if we have more folks who represent their communities in office, we'll have better policies that then serve folks from those communities. And by recruiting and training and providing a network of support, we are getting closer to being there. Some of you have done this already, and I'm seeing a few folks, but if you haven't yet, please feel free to put your name and any campaign experience that you have, specifically if you have campaign experience around building a campaign plan. So let's give a quick overview, just 60 seconds or so. So when we're talking about a campaign plan, this is a document. It's usually a series of documents, spreadsheets, etc., which answer the question, how are we going to get more votes than the other guy or guys or gals or people in the race? How do we acquire enough votes to win? And it is an overview of the campaign as a whole. It is looking at the strategies we're using, it's looking at the tactics, and then talking about how we're implementing the tactics. And to take you kind of through this process, right, we're going to start working together to identify the basics. What are the factors that are impacting this race? We're going to work together to create a strategy for this campaign. We're going to work together to determine our tactics. So how particularly, once we have our message and our targeted voters, are we working to get our message to those voters? We're going to be talking about how we raise resources and use resources. Traditionally, this is like fundraising, budget, but also managing our people and managing our time. And also, we're going to be talking about how we refine, implement, and then adjust this plan so it's responsive to things that come up. So we don't just make a plan at the beginning of the campaign and then aren't able to adjust if, say, there's a pandemic or a crisis or something else that happens in our communities. Wonderful. Well, let's get into it. And again, I said this is going to be interactive. We are basically going to create a scenario together and build a campaign together. So starting with the basics, I'm just going to look at the chat. I'm going to set a timer for just like 10 seconds. I'm going to have y'all vote on what sort of campaign, what office are we going to be running for in this campaign planning scenario. So the options are a district school committee with about 5,000 people in it, a state representative seat representing about 50,000 people, or a small city mayor representing about 100,000 people. Okay, I'm seeing 2 for state rep, 1 for school committee, 2 for school committee. Okay, mayor, rep, school committee, state. Cool, I am seeing a really pretty even. Okay, I'm seeing lots of state reps. I'm seeing state rep kind of pulling ahead. Wonderful. Okay, great. We have made a decision, and again, this is rapid fire. This is meant to be done in a classroom where I can like see hands. So if you think I'm not being fair with my calls, please give me a bit of grace and space as we do this virtually. So wonderful. We are going to be running for state representative. This is beautiful. I'm really, really excited. So I'm going to highlight this so we know. We can come back to it if we need to. So let's think about our state rep district. The one thing I told you already is we're representing a population of 50,000 people. Tell me what else is going on in the state rep district. And with So any demographics of the state rep district? Is it an urban district? Is it a rural district? Also, let's talk a teeny bit about this election in general. Is it an open seat? Are we challenged? Okay, I'm hearing that's an urban district. Great. Historically red. Cool. Ooh, I'm just gonna go with a few things. Okay, and there's a couple of things that work together. And we're progressive running in this historically red seat. And it's an urban district that's been having some gentrification too. Okay, changing demographics. Yeah, Emily, historically red urban district, like this is a scenario, I'm sure it exists somewhere. And what I really hope you get out of this is that these factors that make up your district and who you are and who your challenges are will impact the tactics and how your campaign works. And this is why whenever folks ask me for advice, I'm really reluctant to give it without having this information. So let's set this up as again, as together. Okay, so urban as in city or suburban. In order to kind of make this work, let's have it be a suburban district. Suburban district. It's kind of been gentrifying, but there's also some changing demographics as well. It's been historically red, a progressive is running in the seat, and it's an open seat. And the incumbent has been term limited out. Cool. Wonderful. Let's just, and someone put in the chat changing demographics. Whoever that was, can you tell me what you mean by changing demographics? Are there more people of color moving into the district? Is it more younger people moving into the district? Is it a place where there's a new college, right? Or maybe that they've built a new retirement community and there's more retired folks. What do you mean by changing demographics? Or anyone can chime in. I'm not seeing anything, so I'm just going to take a leap and say that there are more younger people and also more, yeah, let's just start with more younger people and we can adjust as we go on. Yep, younger people, voters moving in. Wonderful. Cool. Great, so that is us. Getting rid of these slides that we no longer need. So let's talk about our candidate. Who is our candidate going to be, team? Let's think about their age, their gender identity, race and ethnicity, their political background. Okay, we are a woman of color, a young woman of color. Can we be a bit more specific with woman of color? Is it a Latina woman, a woman with mixed heritage, Black woman? Okay, cool. A young Black woman who's a former school teacher. Love that. What else? How long has she been in the district for? Does she have a family? Yeah, she can totally be a veteran. Organizing background. Did you, let's say she organized with her school. Let's say she was involved with the union in her school. Okay, yeah. School, okay, we're gonna kind of like add a few ages to here. We're gonna make her be 38 years old so we can kind of, because politics is weird, right? Like the average age for a politician is like 65 or something. So 38 is still considered pretty young. Cool, okay. I like the idea of her being in the district for 16 years. And she's gonna be a single mother. Wonderful. And let's try to say what's her why. Like why is our candidate running? School short term was a cust. Okay. So she's been working to increase diversity and representation within the school. Yep. She's working to expand funding. Yep. Issues with COVID. Nope. Sorry. You're gonna have to excuse my typos too. And also, yeah, okay, when her child was in the school, she saw inequities. Beautiful. And let's say, for the sake of it, let's talk about just a teeny bit, right? So if this is a woman who was a former teacher, is interested in schools, we kind of want a reason for her to be running for state rep rather than school committee. So is there a chance she was already serving on the school committee and now she's running for higher office? Does she see that the school committee is ineffective without more funding for the state and that's why she's running for state rep? Like what is her why for state representative? I'm also going to push people. If you've been commenting a few times, thank you. I love it. But if you haven't commented yet, I really encourage you to hop in because I want everyone to have buy-in in the situation we're building. Okay. Cool. So kind of, you know, she tried to work with the school. So local school committee wasn't getting enough funding from the state. And let's say as a teacher too, I don't know, Jessica, is it her first time as a candidate? We can decide that, but let's say too, as a veteran, as a teacher, she saw how many issues were also impacting her students and their likelihood of success, right? So as a teacher, she was able to see that, like, yes, it's the education, but it's also the fact that they might not have the social safety nets at home. It might also be like greater issues around inequity. It might be the fact that like things weren't funded on a macro level, right? So seeing all these things that were causing the inequities, not just the schools themselves. Well, the incumbent, we already determined that's an open seat. So we're going to be talking about that too. Yeah. Expand programs for single parents. Exactly. Yeah. Cool. So let's move on. This is great. Oh, no, that's fine. I don't expect you all to memorize all this. Let's talk about our opponent. So what we already established is that this is an open seat. So I want to be able to talk about who our opponent is in this open seat. And Bruce, I think you do bring up a good point. I think we should try to be really careful of stereotypes that we create here. So let's try to make sure that we're being creative and moving towards something that might not be as stereotypical. Thank you so much for calling us in around that. And Jessalyn, I want to hear your comment. Do you want to shift her career to something else? We can definitely make that change if that makes it seem more realistic for folks. let's make her a small business person. Love that. I'm here. I want to respect what Jesseline says. So let's have her be. And I do want to keep this union organization. So let's say she allowed her employees to unionize, right? And worked with her employees to unionize. Cool. Thank you. And then two, when we're talking about why she's running for office, right? She saw inequities with her own child in school, but she also wants to create more opportunities for business owners. Cool. So let's talk about our opponent. So we've talked about this being an open seat, right? And I think we said this is a more traditionally conservative district. So I think it would make sense if we're working with a general election rather than a primary, if that's okay for folks. So who is our Republican opponent in this general election? Let's talk about them. Okay, our opponent is also a woman, cool. Also a small business owner, cool. Anti-choice. Yep, family has served in local government for decades. Anything else we want to say about our opponents? Yep. Okay, and what age range is she in? 50s, cool. So a bit older, but not too much older yet. Yeah, some of these seem familiar, right? Well, I'm sure some of you will recognize similarities or not. Okay, so this is a white woman. Woman, also small business owner, anti-choice. Just to tie it in, right? Like how far on the Republican spectrum should we make her? Is she like kind of like a moderate conservative Republican, or is she like really far QAnon, like hardcore Trump supporter? Where should we kind of, okay, so she's moderate conservative. So normally I do this, again, Emerge works to, recruit and train women. So a lot of times this is I do want to say it's usually a very typical, like, oh, this is a straight, white, rich guy in his mid-60s who's been in office for 20 years. So I'm really excited to run this exercise against a, conservative Republican white woman in her 50s. Cool. And does she have any other political experience? Yes, her family served in local government for decades, but is she in local government at all, or no? Or would this be her first time running? Former DA is cool. Ooh, I like Chamber of Commerce. Let's do Chamber of Commerce and a past school board member. Or actually, I see 2 city councils, so let's do that. So now we are moving on to what it will take to win and creating a strategy and our win number. Okay, I'm trying to go through this quickly. So I hope this is still helpful for folks. So this is a general election. Do we want this to be an election that's taking place overlapping with a presidential election year or a midterm election year? It will help us determine how many voters we're going to likely have to turn out. Okay, I'm seeing Okay, I'm seeing more midterms than presidentials. So let's do that. So the midterm turnout, we're going to look at the past couple of midterms, right? So we're looking at 2018 turnout. We're looking at 2016 turnout. And nope, 2016 is a presidential year. Lies. We're looking at 2014 turnout. And we are looking at 2010 turnout. And I'm going to give you the number of ballots cast, and we're going to work together to try to create what we think the win number might be. So let's say in 2018, there were 2,600, no, 2,300, 400 ballots cast, nope. 24,000 ballots cast. There we go. Sorry, team. I really appreciate your patience. The previous year's election, there were 26,000 ballots cast. And then going back a bit further, there were 23,000 ballots cast. And traditionally, right, when we're thinking about our win number, we take the past 3 similar elections and average them together. So if we were to do that, right, we'd have an average of 24,333 votes likely to be cast in this election. Are folks good with that, or do we want to make any additional changes to this amount of votes that we think might be cast in this upcoming election? Cool. I'm hearing someone say sounds good. I appreciate that. What I like to do, though, is kind of just take a gut feeling, and I can, ooh, Ethan is asking the real questions. Any redistricting following the new census? Wow, we are not going to be able to get into that in our training, but yes, we would be looking into that. Also, it is high turnout to midterms. We are, again, you would be looking at this for your real numbers and adjusting. This is just meant to be an example. And again, when we get into budget, I'm not going to say like, these are the right numbers for these things, but helping you work through the process. But for this example, what I like to do is try to estimate up if at all possible, right? So instead of saying like, okay, you know, I personally think that 2022 election year has a real chance of being just as exciting as 2014 or even more exciting than 2018. So I'm probably going to say, let's say there's going to be about 2,000 voters, likely 2,500 ballots cast. And again, traditionally when we do campaigns, we do 50% plus 1 to figure out our like bare minimum win number. But in order to add a bit of a buffer, I always do 52%. So we're going to take this 25,000 ballots cast. 25,000 ballots cast. Thank you. Because there are 50,000 people in the district. So about half the people are going to vote. Or we expect half the people are going to go vote. And when we do that, we are going to anticipate a win number. We need to get 13,000 votes for us. So far, so good? And what I usually like to do too is once we have a sense of how many votes we're going to need to win, we need to figure out, okay, who are those people? Who are we reaching out to? What does that look like? How large should our target universe be? Because I tell you what, if we're only reaching out to 13,000 people, and that's the exact number we need to win, there's going to be some people we aren't able to get a hold of. There's going to be some of those people who aren't going to vote for us. We're going to be in a bit of a tough spot. So I always try to have my target universe be 2 to 3 times the size of what my win number is. So when I'm looking at my target universe, we want to be reaching out to or trying to get our message to about 1,300, 13,000 times 2 equals 26,000. Cool. So this is a number we're going to be using going forward. This is what we're calling our target universe. These are the folks we're reaching out to with our message, which I'll get to in a moment. I do want to say about targeting, there's lots of other trainings on that. Since this is a theoretical campaign, generally there's 2 behaviors we're trying to create. One is who people are voting for, hoping they'll vote for us, and whether or not they'll vote, again, hoping they'll vote and then vote for us. General things is do question your assumptions, right? If you're a Democrat, just don't automatically assume that people of color will vote for you. Do check your math. And do be aware of who can and cannot vote for you. And I say this in some states where, for example, there's a closed primary. If you are targeting Republicans, they would not be able to vote in your race. Normally, I would do an exercise with this, but since it's a theoretical race, a lot of the way that Democrats and progressives have been doing targeting does reinforce systematic stereotypes. And I can't imagine doing that in this theoretical situation without creating even more space for that than we already did. So I want to leave that out for now, but do know that you would be going through and thinking about from your candidate's perspective, okay, who are the people who are the most likely to vote for me? Who are the people who I can persuade to vote for me? And who are the people who, if I can make a case for why they should vote for me, they'd be willing to turn out for me in my campaign. Okay. We're about halfway through, so we're going to do this really quickly. This is a message box. Again, for folks who are newer, I recommend you look it up, message box or tully box or something along those lines that helps people create a message. Generally, we'll say the true and wonderful things about us. Our opponent will say the true and wonderful things about themselves. They will say horrible things about us, or maybe not horrible, but things that we don't necessarily think are likely to help us persuade people. And we will say things about them. We would fill this all out and build a message. We are running just a teeny bit low on time. So I want us to kind of draft this up or draft a couple ideas. It's called the message box, Annie. Just draft a couple ideas of what are things that we could be saying to our voters. What are things we could be saying to that 26,000 people to encourage at least half of them, to encourage at least 13,000 of them to choose us and vote come election day. So what is a sample message that our candidate could use? We'll take a couple. So let's just brainstorm in the box. Okay. And one way I like to start message boxes, even if it drops off later, is that you should vote for me because I will represent local business owners. So that's an interesting one because normally when we take a message, we want to have some sort of contrast. And our opponent also, right, works with business owners, was on the Chamber of Commerce. So we'll have to think about how we make that piece really contrast. What else is something we could say in our message box? Or in our message? Why should someone vote for our candidate rather than the Republican woman? Yes. What if we said something like all local business owners? Something along the lines of our veterans, and as someone who served our country, I'll serve you all as a state rep. Equity, justice, understands the local education needs, small business started by COVID. Okay, tax breaks. Okay, we're just gonna move this up here just so we have a bit more space to brainstorm. Okay, because so we did say though that she unionized her employees. So, right, she can do something around, right, like this concept that we need someone who can look at this and understand the needs of the business, but also the needs of the workers. Offer more support to professions, and our schools are in support. Our school committee. We can also tie in the workforce, right? We cannot create a 21st century workforce with 19th century education. Or I guess it would be 20th century education. Being young, because more young people are working in the area, yes. And this is actually a place where we could probably have really strong contrast with our opponent, is kind of this concept of bringing a fresh new voice, right? Also, it helps protect against attack when she's like, when her opponent says, oh, you've only been living here for 16 years. You aren't a lifelong resident. One's help support person. Yep. I'm just going to start to copy and paste some from the chat. Yep, healthcare and support for single parents. I moved to this district because I love it, and I know we can work together to create a brighter for everyone. One that includes other young folks who have moved here. Yeah. And we would be building this into an overall thing, thinking about like how we can tie this into an overall message, right? So are we kind of basing it on she's like the leader who will get things done? Is she the one who will truly be a voice for all? Is she one that will, you know, with her business background, right, make sure that the budgets are balanced and strong, kind of working with a theme, right? We won't have time to get into it here, but kind of right now what I'm getting is a sense of like a state representative for all, right? Like will fight for veterans, she'll fight for workers, she'll fight for business owners, she'll fight for women, and she'll fight to make our schools stronger for the future. She gets things done, right? Yeah, and talking about, right, the affordable housing, ability for businesses to recruit work-ready employees, exactly. So it's kind of this business sense. It's like a compassionate business leader is also where she might go to, right? Like, yes, she cares about business, yes, she cares about the economy, but we get that by investing in our education, investing in healthcare, investing in our workers, and investing in our societal structures. Cool, so we have a message, cool. So this is our strategy, right? We have our message, we have our targeted voters, and now we're going to be talking about how we get this message to our voters. Right, I love that. Anada, I might not be pronouncing your name wrong, but the contrast is here as our opponent only represents one portion of the population while we represent everyone. And kind of we can do like saying like this district used to be what our opponent looked like, right? Like maybe not that per se, that was probably bad, scratch that. But something around the lines of since her family has been serving in office for generations, our district doesn't look like that anymore. Our district isn't that anymore. And we know that we can't just be doing the same old in order to get to where we need to be. So we need a state representative who will represent everyone. Cool. So now that we have our message, we'll have an idea of who our target voters need to be. We need to be talking about how we get our message to our voters. And this is called our tactics. So generally, we want to select tactics that allow us to, again, convey our message to those targeted specific voters, to that specific 26,000 voters in order to get that 13,000 voters to vote for us come election day. We want to use our resources as strategically as possible, and we want to collect data when we can. This is what allows us to run a more effective campaign going forward. If someone tells us they aren't going to vote for us, cool. We don't need to continue to reach out to them for the rest of the campaign. If someone says they are going to vote for us, cool. We know to make sure that they have information they need about vote by mail, early voting, etc. So for now, right, I'd love to, before we get to the next slide, I'd love to just have folks put into the chat ideas of different tactics or ideas or things they've seen done on campaigns. Text banking, yes, Emily, for sure. SMS plus, yep. Relational organizing, love that. Social media campaign, Twitter, TikToks to reach younger folks, virtual phone bank, phone banking, yep. Facebook ads, yes, sir. Relational organizing is kind of this tool is becoming more and more common. It's either a tool or it's just kind of like old-fashioned organizing where you have volunteers on your campaign reach out to their friends and their networks and their relations to encourage them to vote for you and to turn out to vote. So it could be someone you recruit to your campaign and then they go through all their Facebook friends and message them privately. Geofencing. I don't even know what geofencing is, Bruce. Bruce is next level, y'all. Yep, Reach is a good tool for relational organizing. I've also heard of Outreach Circle. I'm not sure if it's going to be recorded. I will leave that off to Omar, but I will be able to share the slideshow with folks. Virtual town halls, yep. Cool. Social media targeting based on specific geographic regions. Cool. Yeah, so targeting your social media ads, house parties, beautiful. It makes me sad. Like, let's all remember the beautiful days that we were able to go door to door. Like, that is still really important. Not today, obviously. I don't encourage anyone to go canvassing right now, but that should not be a tactic that we forget post-COVID. So for the sake of this campaign, and again, if folks have any issues, we can try to adjust it, is let's talk about setting our field goals. So field are tactics that have two-way communication with voters and focus our field goals on kind of this phone calls and texting piece. Those are the two major ways I'm seeing folks reach out to voters. And again, this is meant to show you the process, right? If you want to do more on your campaign, cool. We do only have 10 minutes, so I'm going to go through this a bit more quickly. So first, right, we want to be thinking about, okay, the first goal we want to say is how many passes do we want to make? How many times do we want to reach out to these folks? So let's say, for example, we want to do 3 passes, okay? Now we know that our target universe is 26,000 people. These are the people we're trying to reach out to, times 3, right? Because we're calling each of them 3 times, hoping to get a hold of them, talk to them about the race, talk about why they can vote by mail and all of that. So we're going to need to make 78,000 calls. Now, to be honest, this will probably be a bit less, right? As we make our first pass or our second pass, people will drop off our list, but let's aim for the higher piece. Now, when we talk about shifts, let's assume people can make 100 calls a shift. So that means we're going to need 780 shifts. And one thing that we didn't talk about was how many weeks we have between now and Election Day. So what do folks think? Are we starting our campaign a year in advance? Are we starting our campaign 16? Jessica is like, we have 4 months. Let's freaking go. Jessica, do you mind if I expand that out to 26? So we at least have like 6 months before Election Day to kind of get our house in order. Okay, cool. Yeah, Ethan is asking these really great questions. If folks are going through his chat, like he is taking this to the next level, and I really appreciate it. But there are a bunch of people who are newer to campaign, so I'm trying to get through it. But yes, you would base this on when the primary ended. We are going to assume for this that we are the only Democrat. It is a lovely situation that we are in. Okay, so if we have 26 weeks, let me pull out my phone to do some real quick math. Or if someone else can do 780 divided by 26 for me. Cool, so we need to do 30 shifts per week. Cool. So texting, let's say that we want to do 3 passes or 2 passes through texting. And this is interesting because we want to do 2 passes, but we might not have everyone's cell phone number. So it's like we're doing 2 passes, but only through half the universe because we don't have cell phone numbers for absolutely everyone. So we're going to have about 2,600 attempts through texting. Let's assume we can do 100 texts per shift, which means we're going to need to have 260 shifts, and which means we need 10 of those shifts per week. And this is where we can use a tool like Hustle or another text-based texting tool. Of course, this won't start at 30 and 10. You would ramp up closer and closer to the election. And some people will sign up for more than one shift. Okay, so thinking about this, direct mail, right? Our goals could be to do, let's do 4 pieces of direct mail. Let's assume that it reaches our entire universe. And direct mail costs, again, it varies, but 50 cents per piece. Digital ads, let's say we're going to be trying to do 10 digital ads. And they are about $10 per, 1,000 impressions. And on media, we want to have a strong presence of website, social media presence. And I kind of want to do this. We're going to have to go through this a teeny bit more quickly, but basically what we want to think about is like, okay, what are the tactics we're using to reach out to the voters? Put yourself in the voters' shoes and make sure that you hear about the campaign. So imagine, okay, there's 3 calls from the campaign. There's 2 texts. I'm seeing it on my social media feed 10 times. And I'm getting 3 pieces of direct mail, plus when I go to search for the candidate, I can find them. And plus what I'd probably add to this is earned media piece. So there's letters to editor in the local paper, there's a couple of interviews, etc. But think about how you can construct through these tactics anywhere between 5 to 7 touches for the average voter. So we have 3 through phones, 2 through texting, 3 or 4 through direct mail. 4 through direct mail, and then 10 through social media, hopefully creating enough of a buzz and enough times to get the message so it really sinks in with folks. Yeah, so let's talk about money real quick. Okay, real quickly. So every campaign has different people needs. You'll send this, but think about who's helping your campaign. The resources on campaign are time, people, and money. So we're going to be talking about that right now. So first, get your people. Think about if you're hiring staff or consultants. Think about who's helping you keep on track. Think about who you're going to for advice. And think about who you are, how many volunteers you need, right? So if we know we need 30 phone bank shifts in a week on average, 10 text banking shifts in a week on average. If the average volunteer does 1.5 shifts per week, 1 to 2 shifts per week, we probably need somewhere around 20 to 25 volunteers on a weekly basis to get this done. So think about how many can be provided by your staff, how many can be provided by your friends, how many you can recruit, and how with every supporter you come across, how you can ask them to join and get involved on your campaign. Thinking about budget, again, these are not real numbers. Research what they are, but go through each of your tactics and make assumptions, make guesses based on how much things will cost. So I saw something, it's like $10 per 1,000 impressions. And calculate it out. Okay, so if we know direct mail is about 50 cents a piece, we are reaching out to, 0.5 times 26,000 voters, and we're doing 4 passes. We're sending 4 pieces of mail to each of them. It's going to cost, and this is a lot, $52,000. Now, what we might realize is when we see these numbers and think about it, it's like, okay, we can't do all of that. We'll only send 3 mail pieces, in which case it comes down to $39,000. So still expensive, but not as expensive. But we do this to estimate what our budget will be. From our budget, we are getting to our fundraising plan. Now, usually these are some rules of thumb with fundraising, but basically most of your time will call from call time directly calling folks who you know. So this is calling your network, your friends, your relationships, looking at folks who have given to Democrats in the past, and reaching out to basically anyone who says they'll support you to see if they'd be willing to contribute as well. Events, finance council, and outreach. So theoretically, let's say for this entire campaign, and again, you'd want to be like kind of create your own. Let's say for this entire campaign, our goal is to raise $80,000. Using a bit of this rule of thumb, we'd need to raise about $56,000 through call time. Sorry, I'm gonna bump it up a bit, $84,000. $58,800 through call time, $12,600 through events. Kind of having a finance council. These are people who have a goal to fundraise for you and do so. So about $8,400 through the finance council, and about $4,200 through kind of outreach, social media, mail, etc. So when we think about this, okay, so let's say our average donation is $100. Let's assume when we call someone, talk to someone, there's a 50% chance they say yes. Let's assume of every dial, we're able to talk to one person, and we can make 30 calls per hour. With all of those assumptions, that basically means we need to be doing 156 hours of call time throughout the campaign. And with 26 weeks of the campaign, we need to be doing 6 hours of call time per week. And we would bake that into the candidate schedule and ideally try to front load it as much as possible. So for events, okay, we need to raise about, $12,600 for events. If we can raise $500 for each event, right, we need to be having about 25 events. So that's about one event per week. If we have 15 minutes on our fundraising council who are helping us raise money, we need each of them to raise $560 each. And if we're doing outreach over social media and posts, we need to be bringing in about $200 per week using our social media. Yes, so outreach is what I kind of consider. This is email fundraising, social media fundraising, if you're doing any direct mail fundraising, stuff along those lines. So finally, time, which is fitting because I have 1 minute left. But basically what you'd want to do is once you have a sense of, okay, we have our tactics and our weekly goals for that, right? We have our budget, how much everything will cost. We have our weekly goals around fundraising. We would want to go through and put it all on a calendar that looks like this. So starting from this week, so this would actually be week 26. What are we expecting for our field, right? So we're doing 30 phone, 10 text shifts, whatever we're doing in comms and media. So we'll do a letter to the editor and build our website. We'll figure out our finance goals, so set that 6 hours of call time, and also one event and $200 through outreach, and any admin we need to do. So let's say here we're hiring a campaign manager, which is a whole nother training. But what you do is kind of fill this out and make sure it's reasonable and make adjustments based on that. So if you're like, oh shoot, we did this math and it turns out it's 20 hours of call time, we can't figure that out. So then we need to be thinking about like, okay, how can we do this for less money, right? How can we maybe do 2 pieces of direct mail instead of 3? How can we do doing 10 social media posts instead of 15? Maybe we can do a part-time campaign manager instead of a full-time campaign manager, something along those lines. But this is a way for us to check to make sure that this is a plan we can actually implement. So we think about how we can make it more reasonable if we need to. We also think about how we can make it more ambitious. So suddenly if you got an extra $10,000, $20,000, how would you use it, right? Maybe we hire another staff person, or maybe we do more digital ads or whatnot. How do we ensure this is implemented? So think through, okay, you thought through your people. How can you assign each kind of a stream of work so it gets done? And how do you set up ways to adjust it? And basically I put this here so you know that if you're getting feedback from the field and your message isn't resonating, you aren't getting conversions from people who are undecided to say and they'll support you, this is the time to go back and tweak your message. If you're finding that you are only hearing from a certain portion of the population, maybe you switch your tactics. Thinking about how you can check to make sure that your campaign plan is actually kind of in line and creating the sort of results that you want it to. So we are just about out of time. I will stay around for a couple of seconds if we have questions, but just really quickly in the closing, I would love to hear from folks, just your name and one word to describe how you're feeling right now as we've wrapped up how to build a campaign plan in 50 minutes. Okay, David's feeling educated. Thank you, David. Brian's excited. Kirshan is excited, or said awesome. Jessica's excited. Noelle, wonderful. Oh, thank you guys. I was expecting like overwhelmed, stressed, scared. Wonderful. So here's what I think I can do. Well, actually, Omar, do you mind hopping on? Do you know how I get to send the slides to the folks who came to this training? Omar is our network.
Hello. Sorry.
Yes.
The best, I mentioned in Q&A, the best way would be to try to contact you via the app or even email, because just contacting you because we don't have any way of holding the slides.
Okay. Well, here, let me. Okay. So yeah, if you need the slides, reach out to me. My email is ryan@emergeamerica.org. And I wonder if I can just share this right now as a view only and put it in here. Okay, I'm gonna have you be a view only, but here you go. Yes, someone brought up a good point. Well, thank you for everyone who had to hop off. There's definitely a whole lot more that we didn't cover, right? Russ brought up a good point about polling. For sure, that's something you'd want to be able to piece in. But thinking about, just basically the sense of like, okay, what are our strategy? What are our tactics? How much does it cost? How do we raise that money as a process to build your plan? So you aren't just looking at it feeling overwhelmed. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for joining. I really, truly appreciate it. If you are a Democratic woman who is, or self-identify as a Democratic woman, please think about running for office. Please check out Emerge, and please feel free to reach out to me. Very excited to be here today. Thank you everyone for hopping on, and thank you Omar for facilitating.
I will stop everything at 59, they tell me.
Okay. Well, folks, I'm around for 4 more minutes if folks have any further questions. But again, thank you all so much for your kind words. Thanks for hopping on. Thank you for being such great participants. It was great to be able to still do something really interactive. So thank you for that.
From my end, very interesting presentation. I learned a lot.
Good, thanks.
Did that go any well? Any issues that I could have done better?
No, I think you did great. Ethan, around kind of like me with party leaders, what I really recommend folks do is try to reach out to folks one-on-one to try to build a relationship. So figuring out, starting local, like, okay, who's your county party chair or your city party chair? And having a conversation with them around like how you can get involved with the party, what's going on with the party, and working. Usually I try to help women create like a 2 to 3 year path towards running. So how you can build yourself as a ally and support, like just someone who they go to, right, as to get things done and who they can trust. it's tougher, right? Like there's people with pre-established relationships. So you asked if they can get, how do new candidates get support compared to veterans? And I think there is some entrenched, like, oh, we know this person, we trust this person. A lot of times party leadership will default to the person who's been there longer, just because they have deeper relationships there. But a lot of times if you can build the relationship yourself or make the case for why you are the stronger candidate, right? Those can be ways to help tilt the scales in your favor. Yeah, as state rep is a totally fine place to start. You could, like, there's all this thing about like, oh, you need to be in this committee before you run for this, or this before you run for this, right? Like, if you want to be a state representative and that's where you want to make an impact, run for state representative. Just be aware, right? You'll probably have to raise more money. You'll have to talk to more people. You'll have to make a more compelling case. Okay. Well, wonderful. It was great spending the morning with y'all. Thank you all so much. I really, really appreciate it. Have a good one, and I'll see y'all at the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.